Welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to analyze a story that took place in 2004 in New Jersey, USA. Brittany Gregory was born on April 1, 1988, in Brick Township and was the youngest of 5 children in her family. Due to her parents' divorce, she lived with her father but maintained a close relationship with all her siblings, especially with her sister Brianna, who was 4 years older. At school, Brittany proved to be an excellent student, and teachers presumed she might become a scholar. However, her unusual dream was to become a forensic scientist and study crime scene evidence. Brittany cherished her role as the youngest in the family. Her mother said she was spoiled but not vain or arrogant. She celebrated her 16th birthday in April by making her mother fulfill the promise to let her get her belly button pierced. She idolized the pop queen Britney Spears and had posters of her in her room. Brittany enjoyed cartoons, especially SpongeBob, and never tired of TV shows about forensic science, a profession she aspired to pursue. She and her mother often watched the same programs and then called each other to discuss them. In 2004, 16-year-old Brittany and her older sister Brianna, 20, lived with their father Joe Dunn and his new girlfriend Lori Peterson in a small house near the school. Brittany's father's house was the last on the street and was close to a wooded area. At the time, Brittany had been dating John Fitzgerald, 18, for almost 2 years. He was a nice guy, approved by Brittany's family, and they had a very good relationship, considered the perfect couple. On Sunday, July 11, 2004, Brittany's mother, Deborah, and her sister Brianna drove to South Toms River, about 15 miles from Brittany's house, to visit their older brother and his wife, who had just had a baby girl. Around 8:30 p.m. that night, Brittany called her mother on the cell phone and asked for a ride to her boyfriend John's house. The girl's voice sounded very distressed, indicating a possible problem. Her mother explained that she was out of town and couldn't take her, but said her sister Brianna could get there in about an hour. Brittany agreed and said she would wait for her. About 45 minutes after Brittany called, Brianna became available and decided to call her, but her sister didn't answer. Brianna thought Brittany might be sleeping or someone else might have taken her to John's house. When Brianna returned home in the morning, she found Brittany wasn't there, but her things, including her cell phone, were still there. Brianna speculated that perhaps Brittany had spent the night at her boyfriend's house, but it was odd that she hadn't told anyone about it and had left her cell phone at home, which wasn't typical of her. Seeking answers, Brianna began calling all of Brittany's friends to see if anyone had seen her, but no one knew anything. After unsuccessfully trying to reach her sister, Brianna decided to call John. He said he had talked to Brittany on the phone Sunday morning and they hadn't seen or spoken since then. Lori Peterson, a friend of Brittany's father who lived with them, said she returned home around 10 p.m. on Sunday and Brittany wasn't there. Brianna felt that something was wrong and immediately went to the police station to report Brittany's disappearance. Initially, the police didn't take Brianna's concerns about her sister's disappearance seriously. It seemed to them that the girl had simply run away from home or was spending time with friends. But Brianna convinced the officers that she had already called all her sister's friends and talked to her boyfriend, but none of them knew where Brittany could be. Brianna was sure her sister couldn't have run away from home because she was an exemplary student and spent most of her time at the library. Brittany never left home without notifying anyone, and all her belongings, money, and phone were left behind at home. After convincing the police that her sister couldn't have run away on her own, officers began the search. First, They went to the house where Brittany lived to inspect her room and look for clues. They made sure Brittany's purse, with her phone, ID, and makeup, was in her room. The police found nothing suspicious in her room. They interviewed everyone living in the house and ruled out the possibility of someone close to Brittany being involved in her disappearance. Then, the police started searching the area around the house. They checked all the houses in the region, surveyed the property, and spoke to neighbors. They looked for witnesses who might have seen or heard something. The officers noticed the house was at the end of the street, with a wooded area across the street. None of the neighbors noticed anything suspicious except for a woman who claimed to have seen Brittany walking down the street toward her house late on Friday night when it was already dark. This was 2 days before Brittany's disappearance. During conversations with the police, Brianna reported that Brittany and her boyfriend John had been having issues lately. The couple had argued a lot, and on the day of Brittany's disappearance, they had fought again. This upset Brittany, and she wanted to visit John that night to reconcile. Investigators decided to take a closer look at John's identity. They invited him to the station to see if he had seen Brittany on the day of her disappearance. John reported that his last contact with Brittany was on Sunday morning. At that time, he was at the beach with friends, and Brittany was upset because he went without her. They argued about it and hadn't spoken since then. He also revealed that he had broken up with Brittany a few days ago, but she couldn't accept it, even though she knew he was already dating another girl. John stated he had no plans to go out with Brittany that night and didn't know she would come to his house. The reason for the breakup was the rumor that Brittany had kissed another guy at the party, although John didn't witness it personally. Because of this, he decided to end things with her and started dating someone else. He last saw Brittany on July 10th, the day before the disappearance, when she handed him a letter expressing her desire to reconcile. Detectives asked John for permission to see the letter Brittany had written, and he handed it over. In the letter, Brittany apologized for her behavior and for breaking John's heart. She also asked to remain friends. John seemed genuinely concerned and anxious about Brittany not being found yet. The police had no evidence linking John to Brittany's disappearance, and after he successfully passed a polygraph test, he was removed from the list of suspects. However, John told the detectives an important detail. He said Brittany often walked to his house through the woods behind her father's house. Brittany's disappearance story became increasingly complicated. Detectives began to wonder if Brittany had tried to reach John's house that night, which was about a mile from her father's house, by crossing through the woods. It was already dark, and she might have gotten lost or injured along the way. The police initiated a search in the woods that Brittany likely traversed. She might have taken a path that started near her house. Being in the woods at night was scary and dangerous, and the question of why a young girl wasn't afraid to walk through the woods in the dark was intriguing. The forest search lasted for 3 days, but nothing was found. When it seemed that the investigation had reached a standstill, the police were contacted by a woman who was with her brother in a park in the same area on the night Brittany disappeared. It was quiet, deserted, and there were no cars, except for one, a Chevrolet truck with distinctive wheels passed by them. The woman noticed this car and even remembered the license plate. After thorough checking, investigators found the car was registered to a 23-year-old named Anthony Geiger. To determine his connection to Brittany's disappearance, the police began investigating Anthony's past and found out that he was Bobby Joe's ex-boyfriend, Brittany's sister. Bobby Joe told detectives that they ended their relationship about a month ago because Anthony was excessively jealous and paid too much attention to Brittany. She also suspected that 23-year-old Anthony had feelings for her younger sister, Brittany, and decided to definitively end the relationship with him. Recently, Brittany's friends remembered that Anthony always looked at her strangely and tried to flirt with her. The last time they met during lunch, Anthony attempted to flirt with Brittany again. Detectives began to suspect Anthony of Brittany's abduction and decided to take him in for questioning. During the interrogation, Anthony denied being in the area where Brittany lived on the night of July 11th. According to him, he wasn't there until the following day, July 12th, when the police had already started looking for the girl. He didn't deny having a good relationship with her. Investigators re-examined the letter that Brittany had written to John and noticed disturbing signs that she was bidding farewell to her loved ones. They began to fear that Brittany might be harming herself after the breakup with her boyfriend. However, Brittany's parents rejected this version, believing their daughter was smart and determined, and wouldn't give up on her big plans because of the relationship breakup. They believed Brittany was passionate about life. After the investigation stalled again, the police decided to appeal to the public through the media to find potential witnesses. Additionally, officers from other areas joined the investigation to help. Brittany's parents also decided to actively participate in the search, as they were tired of doing nothing. They decided it was time to act and started knocking on doors and asking people in the neighborhood, but they were not successful. The police decided to go back to the starting point, Brittany's house. Even if she had decided to go to her boyfriend by crossing the forest, it wasn't clear why she had left her phone in her room. Could someone have abducted her directly from home? If so, did she know this person? Did she trust them? During a thorough search of the house, the police found something important in Brittany's room, her personal diary, containing a handwritten letter. The content of this letter was of great importance to the police as it unveiled the veil of secrecy surrounding family relationships. In the letter, Brittany described her life, her relationships with friends and her boyfriend, her school, and also focused on her family. She described coming from a dysfunctional family, visiting her older brother in prison every Sunday, her mother being a drug addict who abandoned her when she was 9, and now needing to live with her father, with whom she didn't have a very close relationship, and his girlfriends. Brittany also wrote that she wasn't perfect, that she had to do things she wasn't proud of, but she didn't want to be like her parents and wished to succeed in life. She wanted to be a forensic scientist and help solve crimes. After reading this letter, the police expanded the group of suspects and turned their attention to Brittany's family, who hadn't been considered suspects until then. Detectives began to investigate each member of Brittany's family and found that a male brothel operated in the house where she lived. Lori Peterson, a friend of Brittany's father, attended different men every day, but all the neighbors knew she didn't give massages but provided intimate services for money. It was found that many people knew about this, and Lori herself didn't hide it, distributing her business cards around the area. Neighbors also reported that suspicious people often gathered at Brittany's father's house to use illegal substances, indicating that the environment in Brittany's house was dysfunctional. Several men, most of whom Lori didn't know, came to use her services. It was possible that one of the clients had abducted her from home. Over 100 officers started working to identify everyone who had been at Joe Dunn's house in the last month. It was a very difficult task. But 1 week after Brittany disappeared, on July 18th, the police announced the arrest of a murder suspect. Brittany's family was shocked by the news, as she had been reported missing and her body hadn't been found. When a photo of the suspect was shown on television, Brittany's mother, Deborah, recognized him. Although he confessed to the murder, he never mentioned Brittany's name. Furthermore, Fuller claimed that he needed to kill someone who knew too much, pointing at his friend Tommy, who was in the car and didn't hear these words. Detectives were sure that Tommy knew something significant that could help solve the case, because Jack Fuller wouldn't have wanted to get rid of him for no reason. They went to Tommy's house and took him to the police station for questioning, but he refused to cooperate, saying he didn't know anything. Detectives knew he was lying. To prove their point, they played a recorded conversation in which Jack said he wanted to kill Tommy for knowing too much. Tommy recognized the danger and decided to cooperate with the police. He recounted that on the night of Brittany's disappearance, he and Jack were driving around the neighborhood smoking crack. They stopped in front of Brittany's house, and Jack decided to go in and talk to her father about some things. When he entered the house, there was nobody there except Brittany. 5 minutes later, Jack returned to the car with Brittany, and she sat in the back seat. According to Tommy, he was confused and asked what was happening. Brittany didn't respond, looked down, and Jack said he would take Tommy home. Tommy stated that Jack took him home, and as he got out of the car, Brittany, who was sitting in the back seat, also got out of the car and went into the front passenger seat, and then he and Jack drove away. The next day when they met again, Jack didn't say anything about what had happened the previous day. They stopped at a car wash where Jack thoroughly washed the car inside and out. This was unusual since he had never done that before. The car wash attendant even joked about it, but Jack got angry and told him to mind his own business or he would be at risk. Tommy explained that when he heard about Brittany's disappearance, he realized that Jack might be involved and asked directly what he was doing with the girl. Jack got very angry at the question and said he had taken her home, leaving him rude and warning him not to ask again if he didn't want trouble. Tommy assumed that Jack took Brittany to the forest to rape her as he planned to use Lori's intimate services that night, but she wasn't home. Detectives realized that Jack was the right man for them when they arrived to arrest him. Jack was holding a gas can and seemed like he was going to set fire to his car. Was he going to burn the car to destroy evidence? Yes, it seemed so. During the search, they found blood in the car, and forensics determined it was Brittany's blood. After the police discovered that Jack had visited a car wash after the trip with Brittany, they went there and confiscated the vacuum cleaner he had used. Forensic experts found sand particles bonded by blood in the vacuum cleaner. Tests left no doubt it was Brittany's blood. Despite the evidence available to the police, Jack refused to confess to Brittany's kidnapping and murder and declined to discuss the matter. Detectives interviewed all of Jack's acquaintances, and most of them were certain he was capable of murder. Many described him as someone ready for anything, despite not working anywhere, always having money. During the investigation, it was discovered that on the night of Brittany's disappearance, one of the officers saw a car parked near the forest. It was Jack Fuller's car. At that time, Brittany's disappearance was not known. When the officer approached Jack, he said he was looking for his dog that had run into the forest. Based on this information, the search for the body focused on the area where the officer saw Jack's car. Police, K-9 units, helicopters, and volunteers participated in the search, but it was unsuccessful. Investigators speculated that Brittany was desperate for someone to take her to her boyfriend's house that night, and when Jack showed up at her house, she asked him to take her. Jack agreed. First, he took Tommy home, and then he was about to take Brittany to her boyfriend's, but before that, they stopped by the side of the road and started smoking crack. This irritated Brittany, and she began to scream and hit his arm. This made him furious, and he started punching Brittany. He admitted to hitting her in the face and head at least twice because she tried to stop him from smoking crack. After the assault, Brittany began making choking and gurgling sounds. Fuller continued using drugs as blood dripped from her nose and mouth. When he finally paid attention to her, Brittany stopped breathing. He realized she was dead and decided to get rid of the body. However, his story was not believed because the coroner found evidence of strangulation on Brittany's body that Fuller did not mention. Additionally, he didn't explain why he removed all of Brittany's clothes. The prosecution believed the crime had a sexual motive. An Ocean County grand jury indicted Fuller for murder on February 9, 2005. Fuller later pleaded guilty on October 18, 2005, to causing serious bodily injury resulting in death. He was sentenced to 30 years without parole on January 13, 2006.